Rain pounded against the windows of New York City, reflecting the vibrant lights of the metropolis in small puddles scattered along the streets. It was a night many would choose to spend at home, but Ethan Lancaster never knew rest. On the 38th floor of Lancaster Tower, the silence was broken only by the sound of typing as he analyzed reports and signed contracts. The room, with floor-to-ceiling windows, revealed the city below, pulsing and chaotic. Ethan was a man who controlled everything around him. Tall, with sharp features and an icy gaze, he stood out as someone who needed no one, or at least pretended not to. Across the city, Emma Bennett was struggling to finish her shift at the small cafe where she worked. The last customer had just left, and she finally let out the sigh she had been holding in for hours. Her brown hair was tied in a messy bun, and the dark circles under her eyes were becoming more pronounced. Despite her tired appearance, there was something captivating about her, a quiet strength that kept her going even when everything seemed to fall apart. Emma wasn't just working to survive, she had a mission. Her younger sister, Lily, only 14 years old, suffered from a severe heart condition that required an expensive surgery Emma couldn't afford. The rain intensified as Ethan left his office late that night. He had no patience for drivers or umbrellas. Deciding to step into the first open place for shelter, he found himself at Emma's cafe. He entered soaked, his expensive suit clinging to his body, with an expression that could freeze anyone in their tracks. Emma, already exhausted, noticed the man walk in and approached the counter with her usual professional kindness. "What'll it be?" she asked, not looking up from her notepad. Ethan raised an eyebrow, surprised by her indifference. He wasn't used to being treated with such casualness. "Black coffee, strong, and make it quick," he demanded, his tone cold and sharp. Emma finally looked up, taking note of his arrogant demeanor. Her exhaustion got the better of her, and she responded in a way she wouldn't with a regular customer. "Sure, sir. But just so you know, my coffee isn't magic," she replied, turning to prepare his order. Ethan stood still for a moment, stunned. Had this woman just challenged him? He watched her move with no effort to impress him, and for the first time in a long time, something in his mind paused. When he left the cafe, he didn't thank her or look back. That was Ethan, passing through people as if they were invisible. But something about this ordinary woman, who didn't even know who he was, stuck with him. The next day, Ethan's life returned to its usual cold routine. He was in a meeting when Vivian, his stepmother and corporate strategist, walked into his office with a calculated smile. She was a sophisticated woman, always impeccably dressed, with eyes that gleamed with ulterior motives. "Ethan, we need to talk about your image," she began, sitting down uninvited. "My image is tied to my work, and my work speaks for itself," he replied, not looking up from his laptop. "It's not enough. The board is concerned about your lack of humanity. A man who lives solely for work doesn't inspire long-term confidence. If you want to secure your position, you'll need to do something more persuasive." Ethan shut his laptop with a loud snap, irritated. "What are you suggesting, Vivian?" "A marriage. Not real, of course. Just something to show the public you're an accessible man who values family." Ethan laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Ridiculous. I don't need a marriage to prove anything." But Vivian persisted. She showed him a list of carefully selected women, all from respectable traditional families. He dismissed them all with disdain until his eyes landed on a photo. Emma Bennett. It was a candid shot of her in front of the cafe. He recognized the defiant look in her eyes. Meanwhile, Emma was facing her own nightmare. The doctors warned that Lily's time was running out. The surgery needed to happen soon, but the cost was astronomical. That night, as she cleaned tables at the cafe, Ethan walked in again, this time with a proposal that would change her life forever. "I need a wife," he said bluntly, "and I'm willing to pay for your time." Emma's jaw dropped, unsure if she should laugh or kick him out. "Is this some kind of joke?" she asked, crossing her arms. Ethan explained coldly. The marriage would be purely formal, nothing emotional. In return, he would cover Lily's medical expenses and provide Emma with enough money to start a new life. Emma hesitated. Her pride screamed at her to refuse, but the image of Lily, pale and fragile, made her reconsider. With tears in her eyes, she accepted. 3 weeks later, Emma and Ethan stood before a judge in a cold, impersonal ceremony. There were no heartfelt vows, no smiles. For Ethan, it was just another contract. For Emma, it was the ultimate sacrifice for her sister. When the judge declared them husband and wife, a chill ran down Emma's spine. She knew her life would never be the same. The silence inside Ethan's penthouse was deafening. Emma stood near the massive floor-to-ceiling windows, her modest dress and tired expression starkly contrasting with the opulence surrounding her. The city lights stretched endlessly, glittering like a sea of stars, but to Emma, they felt cold and distant, just like her new husband. Ethan walked in, loosening his tie and pouring himself a glass of whiskey. He didn't bother looking at Emma as he spoke. "There's a guest room down the hall. That's where you'll stay," he said, his voice devoid of warmth. Emma turned to face him, her hands clenched at her sides. "I didn't expect a honeymoon suite," she replied, her tone laced with sarcasm. Ethan's lips twitched, almost forming a smirk, but it disappeared as quickly as it came. He downed his drink and turned his back to her. "This isn't a real marriage, Emma. Don't get comfortable." She stared at his broad shoulders, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. "Don't worry. I wouldn't dream of it." As she walked to the guest room, she couldn't help but glance around. The penthouse was immaculate, sterile even, with no signs of personality. It was like Ethan himself, closed off, uninviting, and impossible to read. Emma had agreed to this arrangement for Lily, but being here felt like stepping into a prison of luxury. Ethan watched Emma disappear down the hall and sighed. He had dealt with countless negotiations and manipulations in his life, but this arrangement was different. It unsettled him. Emma wasn't like the people he was used to, those who fawned over his wealth or feared his power. She was sharp, stubborn, and unyielding, and it irritated him more than he cared to admit. As he sat in the silence of his penthouse, Ethan's mind wandered to the cafe encounter. The way she had spoken to him, unapologetic and firm, had stuck with him. He had been drawn to her not for her beauty, though she was undeniably striking, but for her defiance. He shook his head, trying to dismiss the thought. "This is just business," he muttered to himself, but even he didn't entirely believe it. The next morning, Emma awoke to find a note slipped under her door. It was from Ethan, informing her of her responsibilities as his wife, for appearances. Attend corporate events when necessary. Smile for the cameras, but don't speak unless spoken to. Stay out of his way otherwise. Emma rolled her eyes at the list. She had agreed to this marriage to save Lily to play the role of a trophy wife. Still, she knew she couldn't afford to rebel. Not yet. She had to endure this for her sister's sake. As she wandered through the penthouse, she found the kitchen. It was larger than her entire apartment had been, yet it felt unused. The fridge was stocked with the finest ingredients, but it was clear no one had ever cooked here. Emma, who loved cooking, decided to make breakfast. It was a small act, but it made her feel like she had some control over her life. When Ethan entered the kitchen, the smell of freshly brewed coffee and pancakes greeted him. He stopped in his tracks, his eyes narrowing. "What are you doing?" he asked, his tone sharp. "Making breakfast," Emma replied without looking at him. "Unless that's also against the rules?" Ethan frowned. "I have a chef for that." "Well, your chef isn't here, and I was hungry," she said, placing a plate on the counter. "There's enough for you too, if you're interested." He stared at her, unsure of how to respond. No one ever acted this casually around him. Reluctantly, he sat down and took a bite. The pancakes were good, better than he expected. But he wouldn't admit it. Emma watched him eat in silence. For the first time, she saw a glimpse of vulnerability in Ethan. It was fleeting, but it was there. She wondered what had made him so closed off, so unwilling to connect with others. That evening, Ethan informed Emma they would be attending a gala for one of his company's charities. It was their first public appearance as a married couple, and the pressure was palpable. Emma stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the elegant black dress Vivian had sent over. She felt out of place, like an imposter. When Ethan walked in, dressed in a sharp tuxedo, he barely glanced at her. "You look acceptable," he said, his tone indifferent. Emma raised an eyebrow. "And you look insufferable, as usual." Ethan's mouth twitched again, but he didn't respond. Instead, he offered his arm, and Emma reluctantly took it. At the gala, cameras flashed as they arrived. Ethan played his part perfectly, greeting people with charm and confidence. Emma stayed by his side, smiling politely but feeling like a fish out of water. She noticed the way women looked at Ethan, some with admiration, others with envy. It was clear he was used to being the center of attention. As the evening went on, Emma found herself cornered by a group of wealthy socialites. They bombarded her with questions, their smiles thinly veiled with judgment. "So, Emma, where did you and Ethan meet?" one asked, her tone dripping with curiosity. Emma hesitated for a moment before answering. "At a cafe." "A cafe? How quaint," another said, barely hiding her disdain. Ethan appeared just in time, wrapping an arm around Emma's waist. She stiffened at the unexpected touch, but he leaned in, his voice smooth and calculated. "Ladies, I hope you're not overwhelming my wife. She's still adjusting to all this." The socialites exchanged glances, clearly taken aback. Ethan's words were possessive, almost protective, and Emma couldn't help but feel a flicker of gratitude, even if it was all an act. As they left the gala, the tension between them seemed to ease slightly. In the car ride home, Emma finally broke the silence. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" Ethan asked, genuinely confused. "For stepping in back there. It was unexpected." Ethan glanced at her, something softening in his expression. "They're vultures. Don't let them get to you." It was a small moment, but it felt significant. For the first time, Emma saw a side of Ethan that wasn't entirely cold. Perhaps, beneath his arrogance, there was a man capable of kindness. But she wasn't ready to let her guard down. Not yet. The next morning dawned with the soft light of the sun streaming through the massive windows of the penthouse. Emma had risen early, unable to sleep in this unfamiliar and cold environment. She decided to channel her restlessness into something productive and started organizing the guest room she now called her own. It wasn't much, but it was hers, a small corner in this luxurious yet lifeless space. Ethan, on the other hand, woke up to the faint aroma of coffee and freshly baked bread wafting through the air. For a moment, he thought he was dreaming. Nobody cooked in his home. His chef only came by appointment, and he himself survived on takeout or corporate lunches. Curious, he followed the scent into the kitchen. There, he found Emma humming softly, wearing an oversized apron that looked comically out of place against the marble countertops and high-tech appliances. She was pulling a tray of warm muffins from the oven, completely oblivious to his presence. "Do you plan on turning my kitchen into a bakery?" Ethan's voice cut through the room, startling her. Emma spun around, clutching the tray protectively. "Good morning to you too," she replied, sarcasm dripping from her tone. "I figured someone in this house should know how to use the oven." Ethan leaned against the counter, crossing his arms as he watched her. "Why are you doing this? You don't need to. Act like a housewife." Emma's expression softened, but only slightly. "Because I need to feel useful. This isn't just your house anymore, it's mine too, remember?" For a moment, Ethan said nothing. He didn't know how to respond to someone so grounded, so unapologetically herself. Without a word, he grabbed one of the muffins and walked out, leaving Emma both irritated and amused. Later that day, Ethan had a board meeting to attend. As usual, he dominated the room with his sharp wit and strategic mind. Yet, for the first time in years, he found his thoughts drifting. He remembered the way Emma had stood up to him in the kitchen that morning, her fiery determination sparking something unfamiliar within him. As the meeting concluded, Vivian approached him with her usual air of authority. "You've been distracted lately," she observed. "Is this little marriage of yours causing more problems than it's solving?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "Everything is under control." "Good," Vivian replied, her tone leaving no room for argument. "Because the gala last night did wonders for your image. People are already talking about how you finally settled down. Keep this up, and the board will have no reason to question your leadership." Ethan nodded, but his thoughts were elsewhere. He couldn't shake the image of Emma, her resilience, her independence. She was nothing like the women he'd known, and that unsettled him. While Ethan was at his meeting, Emma decided to explore the city. She had been cooped up in the penthouse for days and needed a sense of normalcy. She took a cab to Central Park, enjoying the crisp autumn air and the vibrant leaves scattered across the ground. Sitting on a bench, she called her sister Lily. Hearing Lily's voice immediately brightened her mood. "How are you feeling today?" Emma asked, her voice warm and caring. "I'm okay," Lily replied, though her voice was faint. "The doctors say I'm stable for now, but I miss you." Emma's heart clenched. "I miss you too, sweetheart, but I'm doing this for us, for you." After the call, Emma sat in silence, watching the world move around her. She thought about her new life with Ethan and the challenges ahead. Despite everything, she resolved to stay strong, for Lily and for herself. That evening, when Emma returned to the penthouse, she found Ethan waiting for her in the living room. He was holding a small box, which he handed to her without explanation. "What's this?" she asked, her brow furrowing. "Open it," he replied, his tone unreadable. Emma carefully opened the box to reveal a sleek, top-of-the-line laptop. She looked up at Ethan, confused. "I noticed you've been using your phone for everything," he said, avoiding her gaze. "This will make things easier. You can stay in touch with your sister or whatever else you need." Emma was taken aback. It wasn't just the gift, it was the thought behind it. She had expected indifference, maybe even hostility, but this was kind. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice laced with genuine gratitude. Ethan shrugged as if brushing off the significance of his gesture. "It's nothing." But Emma knew it wasn't nothing. It was a crack in his armor, a glimpse of the man behind the icy facade. That same night, the fragile peace between them was shattered. Ethan received a call from a colleague, informing him of a business deal that had fallen through. He was furious, pacing the living room as he barked orders over the phone. Emma, sitting nearby, couldn't help but speak up. "Do you ever stop working?" Ethan shot her a glare. "This isn't your concern." "Maybe it should be," Emma retorted, standing her ground. "You're so obsessed with your work that you've forgotten how to live. Is this why you've never let anyone in?" The room fell silent. Ethan's eyes darkened, and for a moment, Emma thought she had crossed a line. "You don't know anything about me," he said coldly, his voice like steel. "Then tell me," Emma challenged. "Tell me why you've built these walls so high." Ethan stared at her, his anger giving way to something deeper, pain. But instead of answering, he turned and walked out, leaving Emma alone with her thoughts. In the solitude of his study, Ethan sat in silence. Emma's words echoed in his mind, piercing through the defenses he had spent years building. She was right, he had shut himself off from the world, and he didn't know how to let anyone in. But the thought of opening up terrified him. Meanwhile, in her room, Emma stared at the laptop Ethan had given her. Despite their argument, she couldn't help but feel that something had shifted between them. For better or worse, their lives were now intertwined, and neither of them could ignore it. The morning after their argument, the penthouse was unusually still. Emma woke early, feeling the weight of the previous night lingering in the air. She glanced at the sleek laptop Ethan had gifted her, its presence a reminder of the strange complexity of their relationship. She wondered if Ethan would even acknowledge their argument, or if he'd continue pretending it hadn't happened. She walked into the kitchen to find it empty. For a moment she considered making breakfast again, but decided against it. Let him fend for himself, she thought. Instead, she brewed herself a cup of coffee and settled by the window, watching the city come alive. Meanwhile, Ethan was in his study, staring blankly at his desk. He had barely slept, haunted by Emma's words. "Is this why you've never let anyone in?" They struck a nerve he didn't know existed. For years, he had buried the past, convincing himself that emotions were a weakness. Yet, Emma had managed to peel back a layer of his defenses, and he hated how exposed it made him feel. Later that morning, Ethan emerged from his study. He found Emma sitting by the window, her cup of coffee in hand, lost in thought. For a moment he hesitated, unsure of what to say. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Good morning," he said, his voice softer than usual. Emma glanced up, surprised by the unexpected civility. "Morning." They stood in silence, the tension from the night before still palpable. Finally, Ethan spoke again. "About last night, He stopped, the words catching in his throat. Apologizing was foreign to him. "I shouldn't have snapped at you." Emma raised an eyebrow, surprised. Did Ethan Lancaster just admit he was wrong? He shot her a look but didn't respond, instead pouring himself a cup of coffee. Emma smirked, sensing a small victory. It wasn't much, but it was a start. That afternoon, Vivian called Emma unexpectedly, inviting her to lunch. Emma hesitated but agreed, knowing it was part of her role as Ethan's wife. She met Vivian at an upscale restaurant, feeling out of place among the well-dressed patrons. Vivian greeted her with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Emma, darling, it's so good to see you." "Vivian," Emma replied, forcing a polite smile as she sat down. The conversation started with pleasantries, but it didn't take long for Vivian to get to the point. "You've been doing well, I must admit. The press is eating up this new image of Ethan as a family man," Vivian said, sipping her wine. "But I must ask, what exactly are your intentions here?" Emma blinked, caught off guard. "My intentions?" "Yes," Vivian continued, her tone icy. "Ethan is a complicated man. He doesn't let people in easily, and I'd hate for someone to take advantage of his vulnerability." Emma felt a surge of anger but kept her composure. "With all due respect, Vivian, this arrangement benefits Ethan more than it does me. I'm not here to take advantage of anyone." Vivian's eyes narrowed slightly, but she said nothing, simply nodding. The rest of the lunch passed in strained politeness, leaving Emma feeling drained. As she left the restaurant, she couldn't shake the feeling that Vivian was hiding something. That evening, Emma returned to the penthouse to find Ethan pacing the living room, his phone pressed to his ear. He ended the call abruptly when he saw her, his expression unreadable. "How was lunch?" he asked, his tone neutral. "Enlightening," Emma replied, dropping her bag on the counter. "Vivian seems protective of you." Ethan scoffed, pouring himself a drink. "Vivian's only protective of her own interests. Don't let her fool you." Emma tilted her head, curiosity sparking. "What's your story with her anyway?" Ethan hesitated, the tension in his jaw evident. "Vivian married my father when I was a teenager. She's been managing my life ever since." There was something in his voice, resentment, but also something deeper. Emma decided to press further. "And your mother?" she asked gently. Ethan froze, his grip tightening around his glass. For a moment, Emma thought he wouldn't answer. Then, he set the glass down and looked out the window. "She died when I was 10, he said quietly. "Cancer. My father remarried a year later." Emma felt a pang of sympathy. "I'm sorry." Ethan turned to her, his expression hard. "Don't be. It was a long time ago." But Emma could see through his facade. The loss had shaped him, carving out the cold, distant man he had become. She wondered how much of Ethan's arrogance and obsession with control stemmed from that childhood wound. As the night wore on, Ethan found himself lingering in the living room with Emma, an unspoken truce settling between them. They talked, not about anything deep, but about simple things. Emma shared stories of her life with Lily, and Ethan listened, his usual aloofness softening. For the first time he laughed, a genuine, unguarded laugh, when Emma recounted a story about her disastrous attempt at fixing a sink in her old apartment. "What?" she said, grinning. "Not everyone can afford a personal handyman, Mr. Millionaire." Ethan shook his head, still chuckling. "You're full of surprises, Emma. And you're not as insufferable as I thought," she shot back playfully. It was a small moment, but it felt monumental. For the first time, they weren't just playing roles. They were two people, sharing a connection. Neither of them said it, but both felt the shift. The following morning, the quiet in the penthouse was interrupted by a phone call. Ethan was in his study when the sharp ring pierced the air. Picking up the receiver, he froze at the voice on the other end. "Ethan, it's been a while," said a man with a clipped tone. Ethan recognized it immediately, his estranged father, Henry Lancaster. "What do you want?" Ethan replied coldly, his jaw tightening. "There's a board meeting next week, and I believe it's time we discuss some family matters," Henry said. "I assume your wife will be joining you. After all, she's quite the topic of interest lately." Ethan's grip on the phone tightened. "Emma has nothing to do with you or the board," Henry chuckled, a sound that dripped with condescension. "You always were protective of things you barely understood. See you next week, son." The call ended, leaving Ethan seething. He hadn't spoken to his father in years, and the sudden intrusion into his carefully controlled world felt like an ambush. He looked out the window, his mind racing with memories he wished he could forget. While Ethan was in his study, Emma wandered through the penthouse, still marveling at how empty it felt despite its grandeur. She stumbled upon a door she hadn't noticed before and hesitated for a moment before opening it. Inside, she found a small, dimly lit room filled with old photos, awards, and memorabilia. Things that looked out of place in Ethan's otherwise sterile life. Emma's eyes landed on a framed photograph of a young boy, no older than 10, with a radiant smile. Beside him stood a woman with gentle eyes and a soft smile, holding the boy close. She knew immediately it was Ethan and his mother. She traced her fingers over the frame, feeling a pang of sadness. This was a side of Ethan he had buried deep, and yet it told so much about who he was. She was startled when Ethan's voice cut through the room. "What are you doing in here?" he demanded, his tone sharp. Emma spun around, guilt flashing across her face. "I didn't mean to snoop. I just found the door open." Ethan stepped inside, his expression unreadable as he picked up the photo Emma had been holding. For a moment, he seemed lost in thought. "She was everything good in my life," he said quietly, his voice void of its usual arrogance. "When she died, everything changed." Emma didn't respond immediately, sensing that this was the first time Ethan had spoken about his mother in years. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I can't imagine how hard that must have been." He looked at her, something softening in his gaze. "Don't be. It's not something I talk about, and I'd appreciate it if you didn't mention this to anyone." Emma nodded, her heart aching for him. She realized that behind Ethan's cold exterior was a man carrying a lifetime of pain. A few days later, Ethan and Emma arrived at the board meeting. The room was filled with sharp suits, polished shoes, and icy stares. Emma felt out of place but held her head high, determined not to let the wealthy elites intimidate her. Henry Lancaster sat at the head of the table, exuding authority. He was an older version of Ethan, though his eyes lacked the warmth Emma occasionally glimpsed in her husband. "Ah, Ethan, so good of you to join us," Henry said with a thin smile. His gaze shifted to Emma. "And this must be your lovely wife. Welcome, Emma." Emma forced a polite smile, feeling the weight of his scrutiny. Ethan, however, remained stoic. The meeting began with discussions about profits, acquisitions, and company growth. Emma observed Ethan in his element, confident, commanding, and utterly in control. Yet, every so often, she caught Henry watching Ethan with a glint of disdain, as if silently challenging him. As the meeting progressed, Henry finally turned his attention to Emma. "So, Emma, what's it like being married to someone as demanding as my son?" The room fell silent. Ethan's jaw clenched, but before he could respond, Emma spoke. "It's never boring," she said, her voice calm and steady. "Ethan has high standards, but I think that's what makes him so successful." Henry's eyebrows raised slightly, clearly not expecting her poised response. Ethan glanced at her, a flicker of admiration crossing his face. "Well said," Henry replied, though his tone carried an edge. "I suppose you've had to adapt quite a bit to fit into our world." Emma smiled, refusing to let him rattle her. "Adaptation is part of life, Mr. Lancaster. I imagine it's something Ethan learned from you." Henry's smirk faltered, and for the first time, Emma felt like she had gained the upper hand. After the meeting, Ethan and Emma left together, walking silently to the car. Once inside, Ethan finally spoke. "You didn't have to defend me back there," he said, his tone softer than usual. "I know," Emma replied, meeting his gaze. "But I wanted to. He doesn't know you like I do." Ethan looked at her, surprised by the sincerity in her voice. For a moment, the walls he had built around himself seemed to waver. He realized that Emma, despite their differences, was becoming someone he could trust. That evening, Ethan invited Emma to join him for dinner, something they hadn't done since their marriage. They sat across from each other in the formal dining room, the vast table between them making the atmosphere feel awkward at first. But as the evening went on, the conversation flowed more naturally. Ethan shared stories from his childhood, carefully avoiding the darker memories, while Emma talked about her life with Lily and the challenges they had faced. "You're stronger than I gave you credit for," Ethan admitted, his voice filled with genuine respect. Emma smiled. "And you're not as heartless as you want everyone to think." They laughed, the sound breaking through the tension that had lingered since their marriage began. For the first time, it felt like they weren't just two strangers trapped in an arrangement. They were partners, slowly bridging the gap between their worlds. The days following the board meeting were quiet but not peaceful. Ethan had grown more introspective, spending hours in his study with the door closed. Emma sensed a storm brewing, but chose to give him space, knowing that pushing him might cause him to retreat further. One evening, while Emma was reading on the couch, the elevator to the penthouse dinged. Expecting Ethan, she looked up, only to see a woman step out. She was stunning, tall, elegant, and exuding confidence. Her sharp heels clicked against the marble floor as she scanned the room, her piercing gaze landing on Emma. "Ah, you must be the new Mrs. Lancaster," the woman said, her tone cool but polite. Emma stood, confused but composed. "And you are?" The woman smiled, a hint of amusement in her eyes. "Olivia Monroe. I'm an old friend of Ethan's." Before Emma could respond, Ethan appeared from his study. His expression darkened the moment he saw Olivia. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. Olivia's smile didn't waver. "We need to talk, Ethan. It's important." Ethan glanced at Emma, his jaw tightening. "Go to your room," he said, his tone curt. Emma's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me? This doesn't concern you," Ethan replied, his voice colder than she'd heard in days. Emma hesitated, anger bubbling inside her, but she bit her tongue and walked to her room, not wanting to cause a scene. As she closed the door, she couldn't shake the feeling that Olivia's presence was more than just a casual visit. Confrontation. Behind closed doors, Olivia leaned against Ethan's desk, her posture relaxed but her eyes sharp. "You're as charming as ever," she said dryly. "Cut to the chase, Olivia." Ethan replied, crossing his arms. "What do you want?" "I came to warn you," she said, her tone turning serious. "Your father is planning something, Ethan. He's been speaking to investors behind your back, and he's not happy about your little publicity stunt marriage." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Why would you care?" Olivia shrugged. "Let's just say I have a vested interest in keeping you in control. Henry is dangerous when he feels threatened, and right now, you're his biggest target." Ethan clenched his fists, his mind racing. He knew his father was ruthless, but this revelation added a new layer of urgency to his plans. "I'll handle it," he said finally, his voice steady. Olivia stood, smoothing her dress. "Just don't underestimate him, Ethan. He plays dirty, and he won't hesitate to use your wife against you if it suits his agenda." As she left, Ethan leaned against his desk, his thoughts in turmoil. He knew Olivia was right. His father was capable of anything. But the idea of Emma being dragged into his family's toxic web filled him with a protectiveness he didn't fully understand. In her room, Emma paced back and forth, anger simmering beneath her calm exterior. Ethan's dismissive attitude had stung more than she wanted to admit. She knew their marriage was a business arrangement, but the way he had brushed her aside felt personal. When she finally stepped out of her room, Olivia was gone, and Ethan was pouring himself a drink in the living room. Emma approached him, her arms crossed. "Care to explain who she was?" she asked, her tone firm. Ethan didn't look at her. "It's none of your concern." "None of my concern?" Emma repeated, her voice rising. "I'm your wife, Ethan, fake or not. I deserve to know what's going on." Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "She's an old acquaintance. She came to warn me about my father." "Warn you about what?" Emma pressed. He hesitated, torn between keeping her at arm's length and letting her in. Finally, he relented. "He's trying to undermine me, to take control of the company. Olivia thinks he might use you as leverage." Emma's eyes widened. "Me? Why?" "Because you're my weakness," Ethan admitted quietly, his gaze finally meeting hers. "Or at least, that's what he thinks." Emma's breath caught at his words. For a moment, the walls between them seemed to crumble, but just as quickly, Ethan straightened, his expression hardening again. "I'll handle it," he said. "You don't need to worry." Emma stepped closer, her voice soft but firm. "You don't have to do this alone, Ethan. Whatever this is, we're in it together." Ethan looked at her, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. He wanted to believe her, but years of isolation and betrayal had taught him otherwise. The next day, Ethan took action. He began meeting with trusted allies within the company, securing their support and strategizing against his father's potential moves. Meanwhile, Emma tried to focus on her own life, but the tension in the penthouse was palpable. She couldn't stop thinking about what Ethan had said, that she was his weakness. The words replayed in her mind, leaving her unsure of what they truly meant. Was it just a strategic observation, or was there something more? In the midst of the chaos, Emma received a call from Lily. Hearing her sister's cheerful voice reminded her of why she had agreed to this marriage in the first place. It grounded her, giving her the strength to face whatever challenges lay ahead. That evening, Ethan found Emma sitting by the window, staring out at the city lights. He hesitated before approaching her, a glass of wine in his hand. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, his voice softer than usual. Emma glanced at him, surprised but nodded. They sat in silence for a while, the weight of their respective thoughts filling the space between them. "I know I've been difficult," Ethan said finally, his tone hesitant. "This isn't easy for me." Emma looked at him, her expression softening. "You don't have to do this alone, Ethan. I'm here, whether you like it or not." Ethan chuckled dryly. "You're stubborn. And you're infuriating," Emma shot back, a small smile tugging at her lips. For the first time in days, they shared a moment of quiet understanding. The walls between them hadn't completely fallen, but cracks were beginning to form, and for now, that was enough. The following week was a whirlwind of high-stakes meetings and secretive phone calls. Ethan was methodical, working late into the night to outmaneuver his father's plans. His drive was relentless, but for the first time, Emma saw glimpses of vulnerability beneath his steely exterior. She noticed the way his shoulders tensed as he read through documents, the way he rubbed his temples when he thought no one was watching. One evening, Emma decided to step into his world. She walked into his study, carrying a tray with coffee and sandwiches. Ethan glanced up, surprised. "You should be resting," he said gruffly. "So should you," Emma countered, setting the tray down. "But since you're not, I figured you could use this." Ethan leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Why are you doing this?" Emma crossed her arms, meeting his gaze. "Because I care, Ethan. Whether you believe it or not, I'm on your side." He didn't respond immediately, but something in his expression softened. "Thank you," he said quietly, the words almost foreign on his tongue. The next day, Ethan surprised Emma by asking her to attend a business lunch with him. She hesitated, unsure if she was ready to step into the public eye again, but his request felt different this time. It wasn't a demand, it was an invitation. "I could use someone I trust," he said simply, and that was enough for Emma to agree. At the restaurant, Ethan introduced Emma to a key investor, Robert Whitaker, whose support was critical in countering Henry's influence. Emma played her part flawlessly, charming Robert with her authenticity and grace. She listened intently, offering thoughtful comments that surprised even Ethan. As they left the meeting, Ethan turned to her. "You were incredible back there." Emma smiled. "I just said what I thought." "Well, it worked. Robert's on our side now, thanks to you." For the first time, Ethan looked at Emma, not just as a partner in their arrangement, but as someone who could genuinely stand by his side. The realization unsettled him, but it also gave him a strange sense of comfort. The reprieve was short-lived. That evening, Ethan received a call from one of his allies, warning him of Henry's latest move. The older Lancaster had scheduled an emergency board meeting to propose a vote of no confidence in Ethan's leadership. Ethan's jaw tightened as he hung up the phone. He knew Henry wouldn't back down easily, but this was a direct attack. He paced the room, his mind racing with strategies. Emma, who had overheard part of the conversation, stepped forward. "What happens if he wins?" "I lose everything," Ethan said bluntly. "The company, the trust of the board, it's all on the line." Emma hesitated before speaking. "Then we fight, together." Ethan looked at her, surprised by her determination. "This isn't your battle, Emma." "Yes, it is," she replied firmly. "I may not understand everything about your world, but I won't stand by and watch you lose what you've worked so hard for." Ethan felt a surge of emotion he couldn't quite name. He nodded, his voice steady. "Then let's make sure he doesn't win." The morning of the board meeting arrived, and tension hung heavy in the air. Emma accompanied Ethan, her presence a silent show of solidarity. As they entered the boardroom, the atmosphere was charged, with Henry seated at the head of the table, exuding smug confidence. The meeting began with Henry presenting his case, painting Ethan as reckless and emotionally compromised due to his recent marriage. His words were sharp, calculated to undermine Ethan's authority. When it was Ethan's turn to speak, he stood tall, his voice calm but commanding. He outlined his vision for the company, countering each of Henry's accusations with facts and logic. But it was Emma's unexpected intervention that turned the tide. "I'd like to say something," she said, standing up. All eyes turned to her, but she remained steady. "I may not have known Ethan for long, but in the time I have, I've seen his dedication to this company. He's not just a leader, He's someone who inspires loyalty and respect. If you vote against him today, you'll lose not only a brilliant CEO, but the heart of this organization." Her words hung in the air, and for a moment, the room was silent. Then, one by one, the board members began nodding in agreement. Henry's smirk faded as it became clear that the vote was not going in his favor. When the final count was announced, Ethan had won. The board unanimously reaffirmed their support for him, and Henry was left seething. Back in the car, Ethan let out a deep breath, the weight of the day finally lifting. He turned to Emma, his expression unreadable. "You didn't have to do that," he said quietly. "I know," she replied, meeting his gaze. "But I wanted to." For a moment, they sat in silence, the city lights flickering outside. Then Ethan reached for her hand, his touch tentative but sincere. "Thank you," he said, his voice filled with gratitude. Emma squeezed his hand lightly, a small smile playing on her lips. "We're in this together, remember?" Ethan nodded, his heart swelling with an unfamiliar emotion. For the first time in years, he felt like he wasn't alone. That night, as they sat together in the living room, sharing a bottle of wine, the walls between them seemed to dissolve completely. They talked about their dreams, their fears, and the burdens they carried. It was a moment of raw honesty that neither of them had expected, but both desperately needed. Ethan looked at Emma, his voice soft. "You've changed everything, you know that?" Emma smiled, her heart full. "Maybe you needed someone to remind you that you don't have to do it all alone." As the night wore on, they found themselves closer than ever, the lines between their arrangement and reality blurring. For the first time, their marriage felt real, not just a contract, but a partnership built on trust and growing affection. The days following the board meeting were unexpectedly tranquil. Ethan, for the first time in years, allowed himself to slow down. He spent more time at home, often finding himself drawn to Emma's presence. Her laughter filled the once quiet penthouse, softening the sharp edges of his world. Emma, too, felt the change. Their partnership, once rooted in necessity, now carried a warmth she hadn't expected. They shared meals, traded playful banter, and even enjoyed quiet moments of companionship. Yet, beneath the surface, both were acutely aware that their peace was fragile. Ethan hadn't heard from his father since the meeting, but he knew better than to believe the battle was over. Henry Lancaster was not a man to accept defeat quietly. One morning, while Emma was preparing breakfast, a courier arrived with a thick envelope addressed to Ethan. He opened it at the kitchen counter, his jaw tightening as he read its contents. "What is it?" Emma asked, setting down a plate of toast. Ethan handed her the letter, his face grim. It was a legal notice. Henry was suing Ethan, alleging misconduct and fraudulent practices in the company. The accusations were baseless, but the implications were severe. If the lawsuit gained traction, it could tarnish Ethan's reputation and destabilize the company. Emma read the letter, her heart sinking. "Can he do this?" "He can try." Ethan replied, his voice low. "And knowing him, he'll stop at nothing to make my life hell." Emma placed a hand on his arm, her touch grounding him. "We'll fight this, Ethan, together." He looked at her, the weight of his burdens reflected in his eyes. "You don't have to do this, Emma. You've already done more than I could have asked." "I'm not going anywhere," she said firmly. "Whatever happens, we face it together." As Ethan prepared his legal team for the fight ahead, Emma found herself taking on a more active role in his life. She attended meetings with him, offering insights that surprised even the most seasoned executives. Her sharp mind and calm demeanor earned her respect, and Ethan found himself relying on her more and more. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, Ethan and Emma sat on the penthouse balcony, the city lights twinkling below. Ethan handed her a glass of wine, his expression soft. "You were incredible today," he said, his voice filled with genuine admiration. Emma smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I'm just trying to keep up with you." "You've done more than that," he replied. "I don't think I've ever trusted anyone the way I trust you." The admission caught Emma off guard. She looked at him, her heart pounding. "Ethan," before she could respond, his phone buzzed, breaking the moment. He sighed, glancing at the screen. It was his attorney. "I have to take this," he said reluctantly. Emma nodded, watching as he stepped away. Despite the interruption, the weight of his words lingered between them, unspoken but undeniable. The following week brought more challenges. Henry had taken his fight to the media, planting stories that painted Ethan as a ruthless and unethical leader. The headlines were brutal, and the pressure began to mount. Ethan threw himself into damage control, working late into the night to counter the narrative. Emma stood by his side, offering support and encouragement. She became his anchor, reminding him of his strengths when doubt threatened to creep in. One evening, as Ethan paced the living room, Emma stopped him, placing her hands on his shoulders. "You need to rest, Ethan. You're no good to anyone if you burn out." "I can't stop now," he said, his voice strained. "If I let my guard down for a second, he'll win." "He won't win," Emma said firmly, "because you're not fighting this alone." Ethan looked at her, the weight of her words sinking in. Slowly he nodded, allowing himself to trust her strength. That night, as they sat together in the living room, Ethan opened up in a way he never had before. He spoke about his childhood, the loss of his mother, and the pressure of living up to his father's impossible expectations. Emma listened intently, her heart breaking for the boy who had been forced to grow up too quickly. "You've carried so much for so long," she said softly, "but you don't have to carry it alone anymore." Ethan looked at her, his walls crumbling. "You've changed everything, Emma. I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to," she replied. "Just let me in." For the first time, Ethan allowed himself to be vulnerable. He reached for her hand, holding it tightly. In that moment, the lines between their arrangement and reality blurred further, leaving both of them wondering what their relationship had truly become. The next morning, Ethan received a call that sent shockwaves through their fragile peace. One of his key investors had pulled out, citing concerns about the lawsuit. The news was a devastating blow, threatening to unravel everything he had worked for. As Ethan processed the setback, Emma stepped in, her determination unwavering. "We'll find a way to fix this," she said. "But you need to believe in yourself, Ethan. You're stronger than this." Her words reignited his resolve. Together, they began strategizing, reaching out to allies and rebuilding trust where it had been shaken. Their partnership, forged in adversity, grew stronger with each challenge. The tension in Ethan's life reached its peak. The lawsuit, media scrutiny, and the betrayal of a key investor had created what seemed insurmountable. For days, Ethan operated on sheer willpower, ignoring the toll it was taking on him. He rarely left his study, his once impeccable suits now wrinkled, his usually sharp demeanor dulled by exhaustion. Emma watched him spiral, her heart aching. She had never seen him like this, so vulnerable, so human. She wanted to help, but Ethan's walls were higher than ever, and he had shut her out. One night, after hours of silence, Emma walked into his study. Ethan was slumped in his chair, staring at a stack of documents with vacant eyes. She placed a hand on his shoulder, and he flinched slightly, as if startled by her presence. "You can't keep doing this to yourself," she said softly. "I don't have a choice," he replied, his voice hoarse. "If I don't fight, everything falls apart." Emma knelt beside him, her gaze steady. "Ethan, you're not alone in this. Let me help you." Ethan shook his head, his frustration bubbling to the surface. "You don't understand, Emma. This is my fight. I can't drag you into it any more than I already have." Emma stood, her own frustration evident. "You're not dragging me into anything. I'm here because I want to be, because I care about you. But you need to let me in, Ethan. You need to trust me." Ethan looked at her, the weight of her words sinking in. For the first time, he realized that his insistence on carrying everything alone wasn't strength. It was fear. The next day, Ethan received a call from an unlikely source, Olivia Monroe. She had been keeping tabs on Henry's activities and had uncovered a critical piece of information. Henry had been funneling company funds into a private account, a clear violation of corporate law. Ethan listened intently, his mind racing. This was the leverage he needed to turn the tide in his favor. But using it would mean stooping to his father's level, a move he wasn't sure he could make. "Why are you telling me this?" Ethan asked, his tone wary. "Because I believe in fairness, Ethan," Olivia replied, a hint of irony in her voice, "and because I know you'll use this wisely." Ethan hung up, the weight of the decision pressing heavily on him. He knew that exposing Henry would end the lawsuit and secure his position, but it would also destroy any chance of reconciliation with his father, a bridge he wasn't sure he wanted to burn. That evening, Ethan shared the information with Emma, seeking her perspective. She listened carefully, her expression thoughtful. "What do you think I should do?" Ethan asked, his voice uncharacteristically uncertain. Emma hesitated before speaking. "I think you need to ask yourself what kind of man you want to be. If you use this against him, you'll win. But at what cost? Can you live with that?" Ethan stared at her, her words cutting through his turmoil. For years he had defined himself by his success, his ability to outmaneuver anyone who stood in his way. But now, faced with the prospect of victory at such a personal cost, he wasn't sure if it was worth it. "You always make things more complicated," he said, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Emma smiled back, her eyes warm. "That's because life isn't black and white, Ethan. It's messy, and it's hard, but that's what makes it worth living." For the first time, Ethan saw a way forward that didn't involve sacrificing his integrity. It was a risk, but with Emma by his side, he felt strong enough to take it. At the next board meeting, Ethan confronted Henry directly. He didn't expose the financial misconduct, but instead presented a plan to stabilize the company, outlining his vision for its future. His speech was passionate, filled with the authenticity and conviction that had always been his greatest strength. Henry watched him with narrowed eyes, clearly caught off guard by Ethan's approach. When the vote came, the board unanimously sided with Ethan, reaffirming their trust in his leadership. As the meeting adjourned, Henry approached Ethan, his expression unreadable. "You had the chance to destroy me, and you didn't. Why?" Ethan met his father's gaze, his voice steady. "Because I'm not you." Henry's eyes flickered with something, perhaps respect, perhaps regret, but he said nothing more as he walked away. That night, back at the penthouse, Ethan and Emma shared a quiet dinner. The weight of the day hung in the air, but so did a sense of relief. "You were incredible today," Emma said, her voice filled with admiration. "You showed everyone what true strength looks like." Ethan looked at her, a rare vulnerability in his eyes. "I couldn't have done it without you." Emma reached across the table, taking his hand in hers. "You didn't have to do it without me. That's what I've been trying to tell you." Ethan smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile that lit up his face. In that moment, he realized how much Emma had come to mean to him, not just as his partner in this arrangement, but as someone he truly cared for. Later that evening, as they sat together on the couch, Ethan turned to Emma, his expression serious. "I don't know what this is between us, but I know it's real, and I don't want to lose it." Emma looked at him, her heart pounding. "Neither do I." Ethan leaned closer, his voice soft. "Then let's stop pretending this is just a business deal." Emma smiled, her eyes glistening with emotion. "I'd like that." For the first time, they allowed themselves to fully embrace the connection that had been building between them. Their journey was far from over, but together, they were ready to face whatever came next. The days following Ethan's triumph were marked by a rare sense of peace. The tension that had gripped their lives began to ease, and for the first time, Ethan and Emma allowed themselves to simply be. Their relationship, once defined by practicality and obligation, now felt like something more, something real. Ethan took Emma to Central Park one crisp autumn afternoon, a simple gesture that surprised her. Dressed in casual clothes, far removed from the stiff suits and formalities of his world, Ethan seemed lighter, almost unrecognizable. "I didn't think you were the type to enjoy a stroll in the park," Emma teased, her breath visible in the cool air. Ethan smirked, his hands tucked into his pockets. "Maybe I wasn't, but you're showing me there's more to life than boardrooms and spreadsheets." They walked in comfortable silence, the crunch of leaves beneath their feet. Ethan stopped at a small bench overlooking a pond, gesturing for Emma to sit. As she settled in, he handed her a small cup of hot chocolate he'd purchased from a nearby vendor. "For a millionaire, you're surprisingly good at this normal stuff," Emma said, taking a sip. Ethan chuckled. "Don't get used to it. I'm still learning." Emma smiled, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the drink. For the first time, she saw a version of Ethan unburdened by the weight of his world, a man capable of joy, of love. Their newfound happiness was interrupted one evening when a knock on the penthouse door announced the arrival of an unwelcome guest. Emma opened it to find a woman she didn't recognize, elegant, poised, and radiating confidence. "Hello," the woman said, her tone pleasant but with an undercurrent of steel. I'm Lauren Hastings. I believe you've heard of me. Emma frowned, confused, until Ethan appeared behind her. His expression darkened the moment he saw Lauren. What are you doing here? Ethan demanded, his voice cold. Lauren stepped inside uninvited, her sharp heels clicking against the marble floor. I came to talk, Ethan, and it seems your wife is part of the conversation. Ethan, who is she? Emma asked, her voice steady but laced with curiosity. Ethan hesitated, his jaw tightening. She's my ex-fiancée. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Emma felt her heart sink, but she held her ground, refusing to let the shock show. Lauren's gaze shifted to Emma, her smile polite but insincere. It's a pleasure to meet you, Emma. I've heard so much about you. I wish I could say the same, Emma replied, her voice cool. Ethan stepped between them, his tone firm. Lauren, whatever you're here for, make it quick. Lauren's smile faded. I came to warn you, Ethan. Your father reached out to me. He wants me to testify against you in the lawsuit. Ethan's expression hardened. And what did you say? Lauren hesitated, her composure slipping for a moment. I told him no, but you should know he's desperate. He'll stop at nothing to win. Ethan nodded, his voice clipped. Thank you for telling me. Now, if that's all. Lauren cut him off. That's not all. Ethan, I made a mistake leaving you and seeing you now with her. She glanced at Emma. I can't help but wonder if there's still a chance for us. Emma felt her stomach churn, but she stood tall, refusing to let Lauren see her doubt. Ethan's response was immediate. There's no chance, Lauren. What we had is over. Lauren's eyes flickered with hurt, but she quickly masked it. She turned to Emma, her expression unreadable. You're lucky. Don't waste it. With that, she left, her heels echoing down the hallway. After Lauren's departure, the penthouse was filled with an uneasy silence. Emma busied herself in the kitchen, avoiding Ethan's gaze. Finally, he approached her, his expression soft. Emma, I'm sorry you had to hear that, he said quietly. Emma turned to face him, her arms crossed. Why didn't you tell me about her? Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. Because she's part of a life I left behind. I didn't think it mattered. It matters to me, Emma replied, her voice steady but filled with emotion. If we're going to make this work, you need to be honest with me, Ethan. Ethan nodded, stepping closer. You're right. I should have told you. Lauren and I were engaged years ago, but it ended badly. She wanted a version of me I couldn't be, and I wanted. I don't even know. It doesn't matter now. Emma searched his eyes, seeing the sincerity in his words. Slowly she softened. Okay, just don't keep me in the dark again. I won't, Ethan promised. You mean too much to me. Emma's heart swelled at his words. She reached for his hand, holding it tightly. We'll get through this, together. The next morning, Ethan woke with a renewed sense of purpose. With Emma by his side, he felt stronger, more focused. They spent the day strategizing with his legal team, preparing for the next phase of the lawsuit. Emma proved invaluable, her insight and practicality helping Ethan see solutions he hadn't considered. As the day ended, they sat together in the study, the glow of the city lights filtering through the windows. Ethan leaned back in his chair, watching Emma as she worked. You're amazing, he said suddenly, the words slipping out before he could stop them. Emma looked up, startled but pleased. You're not so bad yourself. Ethan chuckled, the tension of the day melting away. I don't know what I'd do without you. You'll never have to find out, Emma replied, her smile warm. In that moment, Ethan realized just how much Emma had come to mean to him. She wasn't just his partner in this fight, she was his partner in life. The days following Lauren's visit brought a mixture of unease and determination. Ethan doubled down on his efforts to fight the lawsuit, but the cracks in his armor were beginning to show. Despite his sharp focus, Emma could see the toll the situation was taking on him. Ethan's world had always been built on control, yet with every passing day, it felt as though that control was slipping. The lawsuit loomed over him like a dark cloud, threatening everything he had worked for. But now, there was something, or rather, someone, worth fighting for beyond the company. Emma, too, felt the weight of their circumstances. She had been thrust into a world of power plays and manipulations far removed from her quiet life with Lily. Yet, amidst the chaos, she had found something she hadn't expected. A connection with Ethan that grew stronger with each challenge they faced. One afternoon, Emma received a call from an unknown number. Answering hesitantly, she was met with a voice that froze her in place. "Emma Bennett, or should I say Mrs. Lancaster," the man said, his tone dripping with malice. "Who is this?" she demanded, her grip tightening on the phone. "You can call me someone who knows the truth. Did Ethan ever tell you what really happened to his mother?" Emma's blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" The man chuckled darkly. "Ask him. And while you're at it, ask him about the money. Let's see if your perfect husband is as honest as he seems." The line went dead before Emma could respond. She stood there, the phone clutched in her hand, her mind racing. The accusation was vague, but it struck a nerve. She had come to trust Ethan. But this call planted a seed of doubt she couldn't ignore. That evening, Emma waited for Ethan to return home, her emotions a tumultuous mix of anger and confusion. When he walked through the door, she didn't waste time. "Ethan, we need to talk," she said, her voice firm. He paused, sensing her seriousness. "What's wrong?" She hesitated, searching his face for any sign of deceit. "I got a call today. Someone said you've been hiding things from me. About your mother. About money." Ethan's expression darkened, a flicker of something unreadable crossing his face. "Who called you?" "They didn't say," Emma replied. "But I need to know the truth, Ethan. What aren't you telling me?" Ethan exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. "It's complicated." "Then uncomplicated," Emma shot back. "I deserve to know." For a moment, Ethan said nothing, the weight of his secrets pressing down on him. Finally, he spoke. "My mother didn't just die of cancer," he admitted, his voice low. "She was being treated, but my father refused to pay for an experimental procedure that could have saved her. He said it was a waste of money." Emma's heart broke at the raw pain in his voice. "Ethan, I'm so sorry." He shook his head, his jaw tight. "That's not all. After she died, my father diverted company funds into personal accounts, money that should have gone to employees, projects, people who depended on us. I found out years later and forced him to stop, but I never exposed him. I didn't want to destroy what little was left of our family." Emma stepped closer, her voice soft. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because it's ugly," Ethan said, his voice trembling. "And I didn't want you to see me as part of it." Emma placed a hand on his arm, her touch grounding him. "You're not your father, Ethan. You've spent your life trying to make things right, and that matters." Ethan looked at her, his defenses crumbling. "I don't want to lose you, Emma." "You won't," she said firmly. "But you have to trust me, just like I trust you." The next morning, Ethan and Emma stood together in his office, going over strategies for the lawsuit. Despite the tension, there was a newfound sense of unity between them. Ethan no longer carried the burden alone, and Emma's presence gave him the strength he didn't realize he needed. As they worked, Ethan's attorney arrived with an update. "We've uncovered something interesting," he said, placing a folder on the desk. "Henry's case is weaker than we thought. If we press the issue, we can have the lawsuit dismissed entirely." Ethan nodded, his resolve strengthening. "Do it." The attorney hesitated. "There's one more thing. Henry has been meeting with reporters. If this goes public, it could get messy." Ethan clenched his fists, but Emma placed a calming hand on his arm. "We'll handle it," she said, her voice steady. Ethan looked at her, gratitude shining in his eyes. "I don't know how you do it," he said. "You make me believe we can get through this." Emma smiled. "Because we can. Together." That evening, after the attorney left, Ethan and Emma sat together on the balcony, watching the city lights. The air was crisp, and for a moment the weight of their troubles seemed to fade. "Emma," Ethan said suddenly, his voice breaking the silence. She turned to him, surprised by the intensity in his gaze. "I know this started as an arrangement," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "But it's become so much more. You've shown me what it means to trust, to hope, to feel again. And I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose you." Emma's breath caught as Ethan reached for her hand, his grip firm but gentle. "I want us to be real, Emma. Not just for appearances or convenience, but because I can't imagine my life without you." Tears welled in Emma's eyes as she smiled. "Ethan, I feel the same way." He leaned closer, his voice a whisper. "Then let's start over. For real this time." Emma nodded, her heart full. "I'd like that." As they sat together under the stars, their bond stronger than ever, they knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. In the days following Ethan's heartfelt proposal to start over, the tension that had once defined their relationship seemed to dissipate. The penthouse, once cold and distant, now felt warmer. Emma and Ethan worked seamlessly as a team, and for the first time, happiness felt within reach. Ethan, emboldened by Emma's support, made strides in dismantling Henry's lawsuit. His legal team had gathered irrefutable evidence of Henry's financial misconduct, and it was only a matter of time before the case collapsed. Emma, too, had found her footing in Ethan's world. Though she often felt out of place among the glitz and glamour, she carried herself with grace, her quiet strength earning her respect from even Ethan's most skeptical allies. But peace, as they both knew, was fleeting. One morning, Emma received an unmarked envelope slid under the penthouse door. Curious, she opened it, her heart sinking as she read its contents. It was a letter from Henry, its tone venomous and calculating. "Emma, you've built a nice little place for yourself in my son's life, but don't be fooled into thinking it's permanent. Ethan has a history of cutting people out when they no longer serve him. You'll be no different. Remember this when the time comes. Henry Lancaster." Emma's hands trembled as she clutched the letter. Henry's words were cruel, designed to plant seeds of doubt. She wanted to dismiss them as lies, but a small part of her couldn't help but wonder if there was some truth to them. She folded the letter and placed it in a drawer, deciding not to tell Ethan. He already had enough to worry about, and she didn't want to add to his burden. But the letter lingered in her mind, casting a shadow over her newfound happiness. That evening, as Emma and Ethan shared a quiet dinner, the doorbell rang. Ethan, surprised by the interruption, excused himself to answer it. When he opened the door, he was met with a man he hadn't seen in years. Marcus Caldwell, a former friend and business partner. "What are you doing here, Marcus?" Ethan asked, his voice wary. Marcus stepped inside, his demeanor casual but his eyes sharp. "I came to talk about Henry," Ethan frowned. "What about him?" Marcus glanced at Emma, who had joined them in the foyer. "Maybe we should discuss this privately." "She stays," Ethan said firmly. "Whatever you have to say, you can say in front of her." Marcus hesitated, then sighed. "Henry approached me a few months ago, offering me a deal to sabotage one of your projects. I turned him down, but he's persistent. He's using everything he can to undermine you." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because he's not just coming after you anymore," Marcus said, his gaze shifting to Emma. "He's targeting her." Emma's heart sank as Ethan's protective instincts kicked in. "What do you mean?" Ethan demanded. "Henry's been digging into her past," Marcus explained. "He's looking for anything he can use to discredit you through her." Ethan's expression darkened, his voice cold. "Get out." Marcus held up his hands defensively. "I'm on your side, Ethan. I thought you'd want to know." "Out," Ethan repeated, his tone brooking no argument. Marcus left without another word, and Ethan turned to Emma, his frustration evident. "Why didn't you tell me Henry had been reaching out to you?" Emma froze, guilt washing over her. "I didn't want to worry you. You've already been dealing with so much." "That's not your decision to make, Emma," Ethan said, his voice sharp. "We're supposed to be in this together." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "I know, and I'm sorry. I didn't want to add to your burden." Ethan sighed, his anger softening as he saw the pain in her eyes. He stepped closer, placing his hands on her shoulders. "Emma, you're not a burden, you never were. But I can't protect you if you don't let me." Emma nodded, her voice trembling. "I'll tell you everything from now on. I promise." Determined to put an end to Henry's schemes, Ethan began investigating the full extent of his father's plans. He called in favors, reached out to old allies, and pieced together a web of deceit that spanned years. What he discovered only fueled his resolve. Henry had been systematically working to dismantle Ethan's credibility, targeting not just his professional life, but also his personal relationships. One night, as Ethan sifted through documents in his study, Emma joined him, placing a cup of tea on the desk. "Find anything?" she asked gently. Ethan looked up, his expression weary but determined. "Plenty, but it's not enough. I need to confront him." Emma's eyes widened. "Are you sure that's a good idea?" "I don't have a choice," Ethan replied. "He's not going to stop until I make him." Emma reached for his hand, her touch grounding him. "Then I'm coming with you." Ethan hesitated, but the resolve in her eyes left no room for argument. "All right," he said, "but we do this on my terms." The confrontation took place in Henry's sprawling estate, a symbol of the power and wealth he wielded. Ethan and Emma arrived unannounced, their presence immediately drawing Henry's attention. "Well, if it isn't my wayward son," Henry said, his tone mocking, "and his charming wife. To what do I owe the pleasure?" Ethan stepped forward, his voice steady. "We're here to put an end to this. The lawsuits, the schemes, the manipulation, it stops now." Henry smirked. "And what makes you think you can stop me?" Ethan handed Henry a folder filled with evidence of his financial misconduct. "Because if you don't, I'll make sure the entire world knows who you really are." For the first time, Henry's confidence faltered. He glanced at the documents, his expression darkening. "You wouldn't dare." "Try me," Ethan said, his tone icy. Henry's gaze shifted to Emma, his eyes narrowing. "She's changed you, hasn't she? Made you weak." Ethan's jaw tightened, but Emma stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "He's not weak, he's strong enough to stand up to you, and he doesn't need your approval anymore." Henry stared at her, his smirk fading. For a moment, it seemed as though he might lash out, but then he sighed, shaking his head. "Fine, you win. But don't think for a second this is over." Ethan met his father's gaze, unflinching. "It is for me." As they left the estate, Ethan felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He turned to Emma, his voice filled with gratitude. "I couldn't have done that without you." Emma smiled, her hand slipping into his. "We're a team, remember?" For the first time in years, Ethan felt free, free from his father's shadow, and free to build a future with Emma by his side. With Henry's schemes finally neutralized, a sense of calm returned to Ethan and Emma's lives. The lawsuit was officially dismissed, and the media frenzy surrounding Ethan's leadership began to die down. For the first time in months, the couple found themselves free from external pressures, allowing their relationship to flourish in ways neither had anticipated. Ethan, now liberated from his father's shadow, focused on rebuilding trust within his company. He made bold changes to align the business with his vision of integrity and innovation, earning the respect of both the board and his employees. Emma, by his side, provided not only emotional support, but also sharp insights that made her an indispensable part of his journey. "You're wasting your talents," Ethan said one morning as they shared breakfast. "You have a brilliant mind for business. Why don't you consider taking on something bigger?" Emma smiled, her cheeks flushing. "I'm not sure I'm cut out for your world." "You're already in it," Ethan replied, his tone serious but warm. "And you're thriving." Emma hesitated, her heart swelling at his confidence in her. "I'll think about it." Despite their progress, Ethan knew there was one unresolved matter he couldn't ignore. One evening, as they sat together on the penthouse balcony, he turned to Emma. "There's something I want to show you," he said. "Something I haven't been back to since I left it behind." Emma looked at him, curiosity and concern in her eyes. "What is it?" "The house where I grew up," Ethan said quietly. "It's been empty for years, but I think it's time I faced it." The next day, they drove to the outskirts of the city, where a sprawling but neglected estate stood. The house, once grand and full of life, now appeared lifeless, its windows shuttered and its gardens overgrown. Ethan hesitated at the gate, memories flooding back, but Emma's hand in his gave him the courage to move forward. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of dust and time. Ethan walked through the rooms in silence, his expression unreadable. In his mother's old study, he paused, picking up a photograph of her that had been left behind. "She loved this place," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. "She made it feel like home, even when my father did everything he could to ruin it." Emma placed a hand on his arm. "You don't have to hold on to this pain, Ethan. You can let it go." Ethan looked at her, his eyes filled with gratitude. Maybe it's time to make peace with the past. The visit to his childhood home marked a turning point for Ethan. Inspired by Emma's words, he decided to renovate the estate, not as a reminder of his past, but as a symbol of the future he wanted to build. He involved Emma in the project, valuing her input as they worked to transform the house into something beautiful. The renovations became a labor of love, a shared endeavor that brought them even closer. They spent weekends selecting colors, furniture, and designs, their laughter filling the once silent halls. The house, once a symbol of loss, began to reflect the warmth and hope they had found in each other. As the estate took shape, a new opportunity arose for Emma. During a charity gala hosted by one of Ethan's business partners, she met Catherine Whitaker, the CEO of a renowned nonprofit organization. "You have an incredible presence, Emma," Catherine said, "and from what I hear, you've been instrumental in helping Ethan navigate some tough waters. Have you ever considered leading a project of your own?" Emma was taken aback. "I've never thought of myself as a leader." "You should," Catherine replied with a smile. "We're launching a new initiative to support young women in business, and I'd love for you to be a part of it." Emma glanced at Ethan, who gave her an encouraging nod. "It's a wonderful idea," he said, "and you'd be perfect for it." Emma felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. She had spent so much of her life putting others first: Lily, Ethan, the company. Now, for the first time, she was being offered a chance to carve out something for herself. "I'll think about it," she said, her mind racing with possibilities. Back at the penthouse, Ethan couldn't hide his excitement over Catherine's offer. "You should do it, Emma," he said. "This is your chance to show the world what I already know, that you're extraordinary." Emma laughed, shaking her head. "You always know what to say." "I mean it," Ethan replied, taking her hands in his. "You've spent so much time helping me find my way. Now it's your turn." Emma looked at him, her heart full. "What did I do to deserve you?" "You made me believe I could be more," Ethan said softly. "And you made me realize that love isn't a weakness, it's my greatest strength." Tears welled in Emma's eyes as she smiled. "Then we're even, because you've made me believe in myself." They kissed, the moment a quiet affirmation of everything they had built together. As the weeks passed, the estate renovations neared completion, and Emma accepted Catherine's offer to lead the new initiative. Balancing her new role with her relationship was challenging, but Ethan's unwavering support made all the difference. One evening, as they stood in the newly restored garden of the estate, Ethan turned to Emma, his expression serious but tender. "I've been thinking," he said. "This house, our lives, they've all been about rebuilding. But there's one thing I want to build with you more than anything." Emma tilted her head, curious. "What's that?" "A family," Ethan said, his voice steady. "I want to share this life with you, fully and completely. I want us to have something that's truly ours." Emma's breath caught, her eyes shining with emotion. "I want that too, Ethan." In that moment, surrounded by the beauty of their new beginning, they knew their journey was only just beginning. Together they would face whatever the future held, their love stronger than any challenge. The estate renovations were finally complete. What had once been a crumbling relic of Ethan's past was now a bright, welcoming home, a reflection of the new life he and Emma had built together. The halls, once silent, were filled with warmth and laughter. The garden, once overgrown and untamed, now bloomed with vibrant colors, a testament to the love and care they had poured into every corner. Ethan and Emma stood in the garden on the evening of the grand reopening, a small gathering of close friends and trusted colleagues celebrating the transformation. Ethan, ever the composed host, watched as Emma moved gracefully among the guests, her smile lighting up the space. She was magnetic, drawing people in with her genuine warmth and confidence. "She's incredible, isn't she?" a familiar voice said. Ethan turned to see Robert Whitaker, his longtime mentor and friend. "She is," Ethan replied, his gaze softening as he watched Emma. "She's everything I never knew I needed." Robert clapped a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "You've come a long way, Ethan, and you're lucky to have found someone who sees the best in you." Ethan nodded, his chest tightening with emotion. He had spent so much of his life focused on success, but now he understood what it truly meant to be fulfilled. Emma's role in Catherine Whitaker's nonprofit initiative had grown rapidly. She had proven herself as a natural leader, guiding the program with vision and compassion. The initiative, which focused on mentoring young women in business, had garnered widespread attention, earning Emma respect and admiration. One afternoon, as she prepared for a major presentation, Ethan surprised her by stopping by her office with lunch. "I thought you might need a break," he said, placing a takeout bag on her desk. Emma laughed, leaning back in her chair. "You always know when I need rescuing." Ethan smiled, his eyes twinkling. "I'm just here to remind you how amazing you are, and to remind you to eat. As they shared the meal, Emma felt a wave of gratitude. Ethan's support had been unwavering, and she knew she wouldn't be where she was without him. "You've given me so much, Ethan," she said, her voice soft. "I just hope I can give you as much in return." "You already have," he replied, reaching for her hand. "More than you'll ever know." With their lives settling into a new rhythm, Ethan and Emma decided to host a celebration at the estate. It wasn't just a party, it was a declaration of their love and commitment to each other. The guest list was small, filled only with people who had been part of their journey. The evening was magical. Fairy lights adorned the garden, casting a warm glow over the space. Guests mingled, laughter and music filling the air. But the highlight of the night came when Ethan took Emma's hand and led her to the center of the garden. "I have something I need to say," Ethan began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. The guests quieted, all eyes on the couple. "Emma, when we started this journey, I didn't know what it meant to truly let someone in. You taught me that strength isn't about carrying the weight alone. It's about trusting someone to carry it with you. You've changed me in ways I never thought possible, and I don't want to spend another moment without you by my side." He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. Opening it, he revealed a stunning ring, the diamonds catching the light. "Emma Bennett, will you marry me, truly marry me, and be my partner in every sense of the word?" Tears streamed down Emma's face as she nodded, her voice trembling. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." The crowd erupted into cheers as Ethan slid the ring onto her finger. He pulled her into his arms, their kiss sealing the promise of a lifetime together. As the celebration wound down, Ethan and Emma found themselves alone in the garden, the night sky twinkling above them. "This feels like a dream," Emma said, her head resting on Ethan's shoulder. "It's real," Ethan replied, his voice soft, "and it's just the beginning." They sat in comfortable silence, their hands intertwined. The challenges they had faced had only made them stronger, and now their future was a blank canvas, waiting to be painted with the colors of their shared dreams. Ethan turned to Emma, his expression tender. "Thank you for believing in me, even when I didn't believe in myself." Emma smiled, her heart full. "Thank you for showing me what love really is." As they gazed at the stars, they knew that their journey wasn't just about overcoming obstacles. It was about building a life filled with love, trust, and the unshakable bond they had created. Together, they were unstoppable, ready to face whatever the future held. The day of Ethan and Emma's wedding dawned with golden sunlight streaming through the windows of the newly restored estate. The gardens were in full bloom, the air fragrant with the scent of roses and lavender. The ceremony was to be held outdoors, surrounded by the beauty they had created together, a testament to their journey from strangers to soulmates. Emma stood in her room, gazing at her reflection in the mirror. Her gown was elegant yet simple, its flowing fabric and delicate lace reflecting her natural grace. Lily, now fully recovered and radiant with health, stood beside her, beaming with pride. "You look like a princess," Lily said, her voice filled with awe. Emma turned to her sister, her heart swelling with emotion. "And you look like my little angel." As the final touches were made, Catherine Whitaker entered, serving as Emma's honorary matron of honor. "Are you ready?" Catherine asked, her voice warm. Emma nodded, her eyes shining. "More than ever." Meanwhile, Ethan stood in the garden, his tailored suit immaculate, his expression a mixture of calm confidence and quiet anticipation. Robert Whitaker, his mentor and best man, stood by his side, offering words of encouragement. "You've built something incredible, Ethan," Robert said, "and today you're starting the best chapter of your life." Ethan glanced toward the path where Emma would appear, a rare smile gracing his face. "She's my everything," he said simply. As Emma walked down the aisle, her eyes locked with Ethan's. Every step felt like a culmination of their journey. The trials, the growth, and the undeniable love they had found in each other. When she reached him, Ethan took her hands, his gaze steady and filled with emotion. The officiant began the ceremony, but the world seemed to fade away as Ethan and Emma exchanged vows. "Emma," Ethan began, his voice steady but filled with feeling, "you came into my life when I thought I had everything, only to show me how much I was missing. You've taught me the power of love, the strength in vulnerability, and the beauty of partnership. I promise to stand by your side, to cherish you, and to build a life with you filled with love and laughter." Tears streamed down Emma's cheeks as she responded. "Ethan, you've shown me a world I never imagined, and a love I never thought I deserved. You've been my partner, my protector, and my greatest blessing. I promise to stand with you, to support you, and to love you, not just for who you are, but for who we are together." The vows hung in the air like a sacred promise, drawing smiles and tears from the gathered guests. The reception was a joyous affair. The garden transformed into a magical setting adorned with twinkling lights and tables overflowing with food and drink. Laughter and music filled the air as guests celebrated the union of two souls who had overcome so much to find each other. Emma and Ethan shared their first dance as husband and wife under the stars, the world fading away as they moved in perfect harmony. As the song ended, Ethan leaned in, his voice soft in her ear. "You've made me the happiest man alive," he said. "And you've made me the luckiest woman," Emma replied, her heart full. Lily, watching from the sidelines, grinned as Robert twirled her around the dance floor, the image of a healthy, happy young girl, a testament to Emma's sacrifices and Ethan's unwavering support. As the evening wound down, Ethan and Emma slipped away from the crowd, retreating to the edge of the garden where the city lights glittered in the distance. They sat together on a bench, their hands intertwined, the cool night air wrapping around them like a protective cocoon. "What do you see when you look at the future?" Emma asked, her voice soft. Ethan gazed at her, his expression tender. "I see a life filled with love, laughter, and purpose. I see us, growing stronger with every challenge, building a family, and creating a legacy worth remembering." Emma smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. "That's all I've ever wanted." Ethan kissed the top of her head, his voice a whisper. "Then let's make it happen. Together." In the years that followed, Ethan and Emma built the life they had dreamed of. The estate became a home filled with warmth, their laughter echoing through its halls. Emma's work with the nonprofit flourished, empowering countless women to achieve their dreams. Ethan's company thrived under his leadership, its reputation restored and strengthened. They welcomed 2 children into their lives, their family a source of endless joy and inspiration. Ethan became the father he had never had, and Emma remained the heart of their home, her love and kindness a beacon for all who knew her. Through every challenge and triumph, Ethan and Emma remained each other's anchor, their love a constant in an ever-changing world. Together, they proved that even the most unlikely beginnings could lead to a lifetime of happiness. As they sat together on their anniversary, watching their children play in the garden, Ethan turned to Emma, his eyes filled with the same love he had felt on their wedding day. "I told you we could build something beautiful," he said, his voice filled with pride. Emma smiled, her heart as full as it had ever been. "And we did, together. We loved having you here." Share in the comments what you thought of the story and how we can make it even better next time.